All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us this evening. My name is Stephen Wilson. I'm an architect with the Collaborative, and we're glad you could all join us for the presentation today about the proposed development at 1329 and 1333 Jones Drive. Before we get started, I just wanted to touch briefly as to why we're doing this meeting and sort of what the next steps are in the development process so that everybody kind of understands how we work with getting the proposed project approved and reviewed by the city. So this is the citizens participation meeting that is required by city ordinance for the project because we're pursuing a rezoning of the current parcels. Because of that, before we submit anything to the city of any drawings or proposed site plans to be reviewed, we need to hold this meeting, present the project to all of the residents, or we had to notify all of the residents within 1,000 feet of the property, and hold a public meeting and take notes. It's basically a citizens information session about the project and a chance for us to answer any comments or respond to questions about the project. We'll touch more on the next steps later, but there's also future phases in the review and approval process for citizens to make their voice heard to city staff and city council. So with that being said, we just wanted to go ahead first and introduce all of the team members who are involved with this proposed development. So, yeah, okay. So first off, I'd like to introduce the property owner and developer, Greenspan S&B LLC. Today we've got Jan Dunn, who's with Greenspan, and I was going to ask if she could go ahead and introduce herself.
Hello and good evening. My name is Jan Dunn, and I'm here along with Harry Greenspan as owners and developers of the proposed project. The Greenspan family has been part of the Plymouth Road, Jones Drive neighborhood since the 1960s. Our fathers, who were brothers, formed Greenspan Brothers Management Company, acquired the neighboring property, built and continually managed your neighbor Brookside Apartments. Upon their retirement, Harry and I, cousins and children of the Greenspan brothers, took over the management of Brookside Apartments. We have a hands-on approach to management with a full-time manager and employees on the site daily. A few years ago, our two families had the opportunity to purchase the adjacent property, formerly operated as Arbor Springs Water Company. We look forward to maintaining and carrying on our family legacy in your neighborhood.
Great, thank you very much, Jan. I'll introduce our company, the Collaborative. Like I said, my name is Steve Wilson. I'm an architect working on this project with the Collaborative. Also joining me is Landon Carpenter, another architect with the firm who's been engaged on the project. We're a commercial architecture firm. We're working out of our office here in Ann Arbor, Michigan. We also have an office in Toledo, Ohio. And I'll introduce our civil engineer working on the project, Midwestern Consulting. Rob, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yep, my name is Rob Wagner, a project manager at Midwestern Consulting, and we have been preparing and getting permits and approvals on site plans here in Ann Arbor for almost 60 years.
And lastly, not present today, but I wanted to recognize we're working with Kafai Building Group, who is the construction manager and is helping us with the pre-construction services and would be the ultimate construction manager for the project as it moves forward. So starting off here, we wanted to, we know a lot of the people here are in the neighborhood, but we wanted to talk a little bit about the existing site, the context, and the neighborhood, and how it informed our development of this project.
All right, so again, this is Landon Carpenter talking, one of the architects here at the Collaborative. So the two parcels we're looking at today are 1329 and 1333 Jones Drive. You'll see here labeled the site boundaries are outlined in that dashed yellow, and the site is really captured by two roads. Plymouth is a major road to the northwest of the site, and then it's also bound by Jones Drive on its southern edge of the site, eastern side. And the two neighbors next to the parcels we're looking at are Northern Brewery and Brookside Apartments. So this is a view along Jones Drive looking at what is currently an office building next door to the sites we're looking at, known as Northern Brewery on 1327 Jones Drive, which has a very rich history going back, gosh, at least to 1861 when the brewery was built. What you see in the upper right-hand corner is an advertisement dating back to 1893, I believe, or 91, the 1890s, showing what Jones Drive actually looked like back then. And it's, quite an interesting to note that this was a residential area, brewery, so semi-industrial, and also they're depicted as a barn. So also agricultural facilities were there. And so it operated as a brewery for quite some time and changed uses a number of times. At some point, it was like an ice cream manufacturing facility. But most notably, it became what was known as the Ann Arbor Foundry. And the two photos you see, the one down in the right shows what it was like on the inside when it was a foundry. They made a lot of the sewage caps that you see around Ann Arbor today. And then the main image here on the left shows what the site, and more importantly, the adjacent site that we're proposing on, what it looked like in the 70s when the property was abandoned for about a decade. And so the property we're looking at was actually a dumping ground for the foundry. So you see a lot of their trash in the foreground, and then the Ann Arbor Foundry in the background of this image. And we'll note out these areas more in a site plan in a couple slides. So our other neighbor is Brookside Apartments, and like Jan said, Greenspan Brothers are the developer and the owner of this property for, gosh, 50 years. And these are recent photos of the development. And as you can see, it's they take a lot of pride in maintaining the landscape and keeping this up. So, we're glad to be on the team.
Yeah, thanks, Landon. Taking a little bit of that intro to the site a little further, wanted to take a look at what the site is like today. So for those of you who were familiar with the Arbor Springs bottling operation, which recently closed and then was sold, or the property was sold and the company bought by AbsoPure, those buildings are still remaining on the current site. And this that actually relates to the zoning of the site, which I'll talk about in a minute. But this was a site that was explicitly approved for the use of water bottling and storage of bottled water and coolers and other items associated with the business. So there's a couple of buildings that are dedicated to the bottling and warehouse operation, and then a small office building that's at the front of the site. And you'll notice from these photos that there's a very heavy slope going down from Jones Drive on the higher side down towards Traver Creek and Plymouth Road on the north side of the property. So what you'll see here is a site plan that shows those buildings currently on the lot from Arbor Springs in black. The current red dashed lines show that this is actually two properties that would be joined together as part of the proposed development plan. There's also some existing conditions here that are worth noting, like we mentioned, the steep terrain. And that yellow highlighted area is what we saw in those pictures that was formerly the dumping ground for the Ann Arbor Foundry. And you'll notice that area of the site as you're going down Jones Drive has like a higher plateau to it. That's because that area is not a natural feature. The height and elevation of that site that's been overgrown. It's actually full of a lot of junk fill and garbage from those foundry operations and other industrial uses over the years. So it's not considered a natural feature. And as we look at the development, that would be, something that would be reworked and the existing structures demolished as part of what we're proposing. I mentioned that the site was zoned explicitly for water bottling. So for those of you who follow development in the city, this site is zoned currently as a PUD or a planned unit development. And basically the PUD for the site had language in it, or currently still has the language in it, that explicitly limits anything on this site only to water bottling and storage and distribution related operations. There is no legal use of this site as it is currently zoned for any other purpose. So as part of this project and why we are, doing this meeting and why we're proposing a rezoning to city council, it's so that another use can be arranged for this site. We're proposing rezoning it to an R4E multifamily residential site as part of a future apartment development. So as we go ahead and move into talking about the design concept for the site, we're looking at a project that would total about 75,000 gross square feet and compose a total of 75 units, a combination of 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom, and a few 3-bedroom units. We would also be proposing a parking garage below the apartment units. It would be a 1-story garage, not a ramped multi-level garage. And our design concept uses the change in elevation on the site so that the garage levels would be located below the elevation of Jones Drive, so that the apartment buildings themselves would have a more pedestrian-friendly street presence. We also want to focus on that parking garage, providing a bicycle room and storage area for tenants. And because we recognize that a lot of tenants in this neighborhood, in a lot of similar apartment buildings in the area, don't necessarily need a car in their daily life. So we're focusing on making sure that this is a walkable development that can connect with the community, so people can connect with the community without necessarily having use of cars. It's also worth noting that there's actually 2 buildings as part of this development. We very consciously thought about how to propose a development for this site that would make it seem less like a monolithic, large towering apartment building, and something that was more of a community complex. So there's actually 2 buildings next to each other that surround a central courtyard, one being a lower rise 3-story building, and then a slightly smaller footprint that has a slightly taller 5-story mid-rise building of apartments. And we're taking into account how to really make this a sensitive build for the site, looking at the context of the neighborhood on Jones Drive, thinking about how pedestrians can access the building and how we can provide new communal spaces. And as with the designs developing, we're considering how we can maximize this as a long-term development that focuses on sustainability and responsible development and growth for the community. So in this view here, we've superimposed the layout for the apartment building on an aerial photograph of the site. So you'll see the 2 buildings that are part of the complex, the 5-story portion on the west side and the 3-story more L-shaped portion on the east side. It's worth noting that below that, it's a continuous open parking garage beneath, even though on top of that, it's actually 2 separate structures. So that garage would have 2 entrances via driveways off of Jones Drive. The driveway on the right-hand side is in the same location where the current access to Arbor Springs is. You'll notice that on the right-hand side of this photo, you'll see Brookside Apartments. That drive also currently services the existing Brookside buildings. And then we would also be providing a new road that would be on the left-hand side of the site. That towards the end of that road, tucked in the back corner there, that would be where the municipal trash enclosure would be. So again, coming back to the image that was ghosted in the background there, we really wanted to think about the view of this from the pedestrian side. We looked at different concepts for this that might have had a taller building with a continuous kind of like monolithic appearance along Jones Drive at a full height for the full width of the property. And it just didn't seem right to us. It just didn't seem to fit the scale and the context of the community. So we went through a lot of design iterations to come with where we are because, we have to, we wanted to come up with a way that brought down the scale of the development, but still had a target number of 75 units. So you'll see here on the left-hand side, the taller building at 5 stories, we introduced step backs into the design of the facade along Jones Drive so that the streetscape presence feels smaller. We also stepped in balconies on that side again, so it's not just a single large wall and opaque surface facing the community. We also, and then farther down, walking down the road, you'll see that we have the 3-story portion of the site that actually is a larger width along Jones Drive. Again, so we could split up the massing to make it have a smaller feel. Those 2 buildings and we'll look at this a little more in a moment, but they're actually separated apart so we could provide pedestrian access directly from Jones Drive into the interior of the development there. And we also wanted to kind of point out how the existing topography of that area of town along Broadway down to Jones Drive, down to Plymouth Road and Traver Creek, there's quite a significant drop as you go from north to south. Going back to what I mentioned earlier, we wanted to use this as an opportunity to take the car-facing elements of this design and hide it below the Jones Drive level by putting the garage entry farther down. And we also recognized this was an opportunity to help make the building feel less tall because our site elevation is significantly lower. It varies depending on where you're at, but anywhere from 1 to about 2 stories lower than where the elevations are on Broadway. So, we really consciously tried to minimize impacts on building height and sight lines and views to the rest of the neighborhood. Okay.
All right.
I'll let Landon talk a little bit more about our design here. Yep.
Yeah, so like Keith or like Steve mentioned, we really want to emphasize activating this as a pedestrian site, and so that it's not busy with car traffic moving between apartments, especially given that the site is about equally distant to downtown North Campus and to U of M Hospital. It's about a mile to any of those locations. So residents living in this area are already biking and walking a lot. So as you'll see, we have this at the center of the development, a pedestrian entry into the courtyard that the 2 buildings are holding. So yes, what you see dashed in yellow is the courtyard that's really organizing the whole concept of the development, along with this amenity space that we're calling a pavilion that's also located within the courtyard that becomes kind of the central jewel piece of the project. So this is a view of the mid-rise building, the taller building on the site from within the courtyard. And so, but very similar to what you saw at Brookside, we want these, the buildings on this to really be organized around the landscape design rather than the parking design of the project, so that when you're in your unit, you're looking out onto a nice landscape and not, at your car that may be, it's more convenient to park right in front of your unit, but we really want to emphasize this prioritization of an activated pedestrian landscape zone. And so that the building you see on the right of the image is what we called out in the site plan as the garden pavilion. So that's what's going to host some of the amenity spaces for the project, like a community lounge and a fitness center. And I'll talk a little bit about the facade of the whole development. You know, really early conversations with the client. We consciously made a decision to not make this a really loud building with lots of different material changes that are really bright, trying to grab your attention. We decided, let's keep it brick, let's keep it wood, and use something that has more of a natural feel to it, a kind of relaxing atmosphere. So there are some, you know, distinct architectural elements that we are introducing, like these thin vertical piers on the building, these engaged columns that are paired with quite large windows. And what those do is allow for a lot of diffuse light to enter into the units, so that these units are filled with natural light, and we can start to cut back on the use of artificial light and electricity, importantly, as a sustainability strategy. What they also do is help to make this really nice play of shadows on the facade, so that we're starting to break up this mass through the use of proportions and light and shadow, to give it some elegance. And in the balconies, we're showing the inside of those as being wrapped in wood to also bring some more warmth into it. So this is the view from Plymouth, and this image is taken from the entry into Brookside Apartments, so the adjacent property. So this isn't an entry into the development that we're proposing, but it's a convenient place to look at the project as you're turning in next door. And so, like I said before, you know, we wanted to come up with a look from Plymouth that has a lot of presence, but isn't something that's screaming for your attention. So we're presenting a much more kind of vertical facade along Plymouth, as opposed to our strategy on Jones Drive, where we really want to break down the scale of the building to more like 3 stories. To give some presence to the project, which we think is justified, given that Plymouth is, you know, a busy road with cars moving pretty quickly, and the project we're looking at here is set back quite a bit from Plymouth. Yeah, keep going. And so this is the last image we'll close with here, and is a view at sunset inside the courtyard, looking back at the low-rise building, the 3-story building, and the amenity space there.
Right. Thank you, Landon. So going back to one of the points we talked about early on in the presentation is we are presenting this to the community as an information session and as an opportunity to get some comments and answer any questions you have. What we're going to do from our meeting today is in a minute, we'll open it up to questions and comments, any discussion. And we are required to make a summary of the meeting and record notes. I believe when you logged in with Zoom as well, you had to input your name, email, and address. We're also going to log that and include it with the submittal to the city when we submit the documents for site plan review, because you know, the city wants to make sure that we actually had this meeting and talked with the community in the area. So that's the first part of the citizen engagement opportunities for this project. Once we submit our documentation to the city of the proposed site plan, it's going to spend a lot of time in review with city planning staff and all of the different departments that have to get involved. They're going to review planning and zoning requirements, city engineering. There's going to be waterways, transportation. All of these things are going to have to get reviewed by staff. Once the planning department completes their review, it's going to be presented at a city planning commission meeting. The date of that is going to be totally dependent on the review cycle and the time it takes for the city staff to complete their review process and us to respond to any questions they have. So I can't give you a date for that at this point, but we expect it's probably sometime in fall or later 2024. At that point, there's also there is an opportunity to attend that meeting and comment on the proposal. After which the City Planning Commission is going to give a recommendation for the project to either approve or deny. And then the ultimate decision on this project will then head to City Council. There's going to be 2 readings on the proposed project after it passes Planning Commission review. And then there is a required public comment period during that reading before the rezoning is voted on. So there is also that opportunity as well, and the opportunity to engage with your representatives for each ward between now and then. So again, just pointing it out, this is the beginning of a long-term cycle here. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pause for just a minute. We have everybody's mics in the chat turned off. We wanted to wait till the presentation was over. So if you give us just a minute, we'll go ahead and change the settings on the meeting so we can get those items set up. So, are we muted? Oh, okay, so if you can go ahead, if we now have the chat open, and if you would like to bring up a question or a comment, just type in the chat, and I can unmute people one at a time. So so we're not talking over each other here, and we can respond to any questions. Do you have the chat window up on yours? Yeah, I have the chat window up. Okay, so I think we got our first question from Phil Stoll. And Phil, I think this is a straightforward questions that I can answer. If anybody wants, we can have you mute if you want to ask yourself. But part of it is, okay, so the first one, what is the setback from the creek to the building? Rob is our site engineer or project manager from the civil engineer that I think we can answer that. I guess the short answer is there's a required setback to stay outside of the floodway and the floodplain for the project. So I will go ahead and just pull open one of the site maps here and see if I can share again real quick to try and answer that graphically. So if we look at the presentation here, you'll notice that actually the existing Arbor Springs building here is basically right at it and actually protruding into the existing floodway and floodplain of the creek slightly, which is that gray area here. Our new development is actually going to be set back significantly from that. So we're actually moving the new development back farther from the existing floodway and floodplain of the creek as part of the project.
Yeah, and I would just add, in that creek, there's a floodway, like Steve mentioned. There's also a wetland, and there's a required 25-foot wetland setback that we'll propose to stay out of.
Okay. All right. One of the questions was from Gregory Marks. From the look of the building, I don't see a reason for asking for R4E rather than PUD. So that's a good question. And that was a question that we actually discussed when we were deciding how to best come up with a design proposal for the site. The existing PUD, as we mentioned, is only allows water bottling activities. So the existing PUD that's written for the site cannot be used for any other use. So we would have to go through a PUD modification process for that, which is essentially the same as the rezoning process, in that we would have to come up with a plan for the site. It would have to go to Planning Commission, and then it would have to go to City Council for review and approval. The other caveat there is that when we would create a new PUD, we would essentially be creating a zoning for the site from scratch. And that can be a very, that's a much more complex process than just trying to go for an existing zoning. When we looked at the existing residential zoning types in the UDC, the Uniform Development Code for the city, we felt the objectives and the development density and number of units could all be met with the existing restrictions on an R4E. So that was actually why we decided to go that way.
I would just add to that, Steve, that if we went for a PUD, we could ask for more height and more density than the R4E will give us.
Yeah. From Lisa Jane Dish, could you go over the sustainability features in more detail? Will there be a gas hookup? That's a good question. And to like most directly respond to that, we are still determining what types of systems would be used in the project. We have not finalized on what types of mechanical systems are in the building because it's very early in the process. And really we're getting to the point of site development, and then we'll go inside the building. However, based on some of our early discussions, it seems like the one of the most effective methods for heating and cooling the building would be heat pump systems for the units. Again, that's not a final decision on that, but we've had those discussions as a development team with the owner, and it's something we want to review as it goes forward. But there is a lot of interest in this particular project in making this a sustainable development, but the exact features at this time, beyond the initial considerations we made from site planning, massing and parking, a lot of those other features are kind of still in the planning stages right now.
Could touch on other sustainability
Sure.
topics.
Yeah.
I mean, around the choice of using materials that are gonna last a long time, like brick. I mean, just like the building next door, that's really where we drew inspiration for the materiality of the project, was looking at Northern Brewery and the way the brick is articulated on that project, but doing it in a more contemporary way that works with the scale that we're proposing. So a conscious use of the materials, and then also an emphasis on people making it the walkability of the whole sort of scheme, as opposed to prioritizing cars. But with that being said, in the garage down below, we are planning for EV chargers for those that do have electric vehicles. And then I think, we've really focused a lot on this, on daylighting in the units to cut back on artificial light within the project, especially during the day, with the use of those vertical brick elements along the facade and the taller windows, which you don't typically see in most residential, that allows for penetration of light deep into the unit. Normally you see these windows that kind of cut off at 5 or 6 feet. We're showing windows that go all the way to the ceiling to bring in a lot of natural light. And we're also in the 3-story low rise, showing a building that isn't organized around a double loaded corridor. So the residents in those units have a facade on either end of the building, meaning that they're always getting natural daylight. And also during the warmer months, they can open up their windows for cross ventilation, passive cooling, so that they don't have to turn on their air conditioning until, maybe peak hot August months. So we are very much really focusing on introducing as many sustainability strategies as we can.
And we will be adding a sustainability statement to our site plan submittal.
And can you go ahead and unmute Mayor of Lowertown? He sent some comments and said he'd be willing to
Oh,
speak.
wonderful. Okay. Mayor of Lowertown.
I told him he has to introduce himself though.
Has to unmute. So I believe.
Hello, this is Tom Stolberg calling. I've got some comments about the zoning. R4E is, if you read the zoning code, designed to be along signature transit corridors, which would presume Plymouth apparently here. This development is essentially a Jones Drive development. It fronts on Jones. The buildings are up close to Jones. The rear of the buildings are Traver Creek, not Plymouth Road. There's Traver Creek. The bulk of it, there is a strip of property that you own that goes to Plymouth Road on the other side of the creek, but the bulk of the property, the back of it is Traver Creek and Plymouth Park. So essentially, if you think about a key holding situation, in terms of that's often used to get lake access for new developments that are not really on the lake, as a way to cheat and try to get rights for the off-lake properties by having one lot that connects you to a lake. There's a long history of court cases over that. So in essence, this is a Jones Drive development, and this R4E is completely inappropriate for Jones Drive. If you did use a PUD to get this extra density above what would be appropriate for a Jones Drive development, using your exact same building there, my estimate is that you'd need over a dozen units of affordable housing per the PUD code, or over $1 million in contribution to the Affordable Housing Fund. Again, that's just an estimate right now, could be incorrect. However, the concept is there. By using R4E to get this specific building, instead of using a PUD to get this specific building, the only difference would be the affordable housing contribution that is avoided by using an inappropriate zoning code, R4E, for this site. So please do not cheat us like has happened on other sites out of affordable housing money by getting a bonus density without the appropriate contribution to our affordable housing stock, which is essential. Also, in terms of the Juliet balconies, one of the comments I made to the developer of Morningside, that phase one of their Lowertown development, now called Beekman on Broadway, was questioning the number of Juliet balconies, the fake balconies, just the bars on them. When COVID hit, it was very obvious as you stroll through Brookside Apartments how nice it was that they had these small balconies that backed up onto the river. And during COVID, you'd see people with their laptops set out working on those back. I walk this area frequently with my dog. And then too bad for Morningside's phase one development that didn't have balconies, just Juliet balconies. So you may want to think that and adding the balconies is an additional living space. And with a lot of people working from home still, it's a wonderful amenity to have if you could provide that rather than the Juliet balconies, something to think about architecturally. And also sustainability is not addressed at all in this. I'll get off the soapbox right now, let somebody else take over, but this does not meet our 820 goals the way it's designed. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Tom. We appreciate the comments and feedback. I'm going to, let's see, I'm looking through the comments next in the chat. What do you, Gregory Marks, I see one of the questions was, what do you plan for as vehicle entry and exit, impact on Jones and Plymouth and on-site parking? So I believe we touched on this during the presentation, but briefly, there's going to be parking in a one-level garage beneath the unit, limited number of visitor space parking at grade. There's going to be about one space for about 65% of the units. So that's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 parking spaces. There is no vehicle entry or exit off of Plymouth. There's no connection across the creek there. I think that answers the question, but if there's something else, let me know in the chat and I can open the mic for you to talk. Let's see, what is the relationship between the max height of all buildings on Jones and these buildings? Do you know the height of the existing Northern Brewery building by chance, Landon? Did you have to come across that? I don't know if we have all that information at the current moment on that, but
No, but for the most part, it's like a two-story development. It does have a vertical like chimney element that I don't think is original anymore, but they did recreate the chimney or smokestack when it was converted to office.
That's so like I mentioned, we will take the comments for this and try to respond as best we can in the meeting minutes. And if you logged in with your email, we can share those afterwards. I'll see if we can get something more definitive about the relationship between our project and the height of the adjacent buildings. Kathy, thank you. Going down, one of the questions from JB, will the bridge over the creek be rebuilt? At this time, there's no plan on rebuilding that bridge over the creek. There was an existing bridge there that was removed decades ago, and there's no plans to rebuild it at this time. Okay. Let me see. Gregory, you had a couple other questions. Would you like to speak for a minute? Would you shoot me in the chat if you want to? If you would like to. Oh, okay.
If Gregory wants to.
And then JB, if you would like to chat, I saw you had a couple comments. Maybe might be easier for you to speak to them yourself to the group. We can unmute you as well. Just let me know. Okay, so one of the questions from JB was it was that there was since R4E has no height limit, and since you're proposing only 5 stories, will you propose a height limit as part of the rezoning and include conditional zoning so that 20-story building can't be built? At this time, we were just applying under the base level of R4E. But that being said, you're right. There's a considerably taller height allowance with the R4E in that neighborhood. That's something that we could consider that doesn't impact our particular project. However, yeah, at this point, there wasn't an intent to do that.
Well, we can consider that when we make the application.
Yeah, that's something, we were interested in getting some feedback from this meeting because we know that the allowable height is considerably taller in R4E versus what we're proposing here. There was a comment from PA Green. And again, if anybody wants to talk instead of just putting their question in the chat, just say, I would like to comment, please, and we'll unmute you. But there was a question from PA Green that says, given you will be replacing natural surfaces with brick and concrete, how much will the local temperature increase? So that would be something that, that's a pretty complex question that's kind of beyond the ability of us to answer it directly. I will point out that a lot of the existing site on the Arbor Springs side is currently asphalt driveway. What we would be doing is trying to develop this with a cool roof on the existing building so that we're going to minimize the heat island effect that would be generated from this development. And as you can see, we're also trying to develop a courtyard that has natural plantings as well as a green roof on the visitor amenity space that would help mitigate that effect. So yes, I am acknowledging that the project would remove some natural growth and replace it with our new building, but we're really taking a thoughtful approach on how we would address that. Okay. Okay, Jeffra, you said you would like to talk, so we just unmuted you if you want to go ahead.
So should I talk? Actually, I'm not Jeffra. I'm just in her house because I don't do Zoom in my house. I'm a Zoom virgin. So,
Could you
Laura
introduce
Stroh.
yourself then?
I'm Laura Stroh. I live on Broadway. LAURASTROWE. I've lived in 2 different properties on Broadway, and I've actually lived in Brookside apartments, in 2 different apartments in Brookside when we first came to Ann Arbor in 1969. My first question is there any guest parking? You didn't mention that because we have a parking problem on Jones Drive.
Yes, there is going to be guest parking. It was between, was it 10 spaces, 8 to 10 spaces? Yeah. We got the site plan here, but yes, there is going to be visitor parking for the development off street as part of
Anything outside of the building is guest?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's 10 spaces.
Mhm.
So 75 units you're gonna have, and you're only gonna have 7 to 10 guests?
We have 7 to
They're
10
only gonna have
spaces.
50 spots for the residents.
Yeah, it seems like you're under parking here. I mean, you're planning on people living in a way that they actually don't live. Many couples have 2 cars. Roommates have 2 cars, and then if they have a guest, that's going to be a problem. So that's my first question I'd like you to consider when you continue to make your plans. The other is, in addition to those Juliet balconies, you have those strange balconies where you actually have 3 sides that are inset, so to speak, so that it's just the front surface that's open to the outside. They're like little cubby hole balconies, I would call them. I don't know what their names are technically in the architectural trade. I've seen them on the new buildings on Main Street, the Yard maybe, or the ones down at the bottom of Main Street. They're totally unusable and unpleasant because there's no cross breeze that can come there. And you don't get any feeling of being inside. You're just inside without a window instead of on a balcony. So I would say that if you're going to have balconies, have real balconies and not things that are just holes in the walls. Finally, the biggest thing is 5 stories on Jones Drive is totally inappropriate. The tallest thing we have there, aside from the chimney on the old foundry, is the 2 stories of the foundry. And then suddenly we're going to have 5 stories. That's outrageous. And I can't believe that you should be allowed to do that. And I know you are allowed to do it. And that's the crime of the city these days. So that's my comment.
Okay, thank you very much, Laura. I appreciate the comments and feedback. Did you have another one you unmuted? Was it?
I think they should be able to unmute themselves.
Oh, okay.
As long as they do it one at a time.
Yeah,
Okay,
but please
yeah,
do it.
yeah,
If you're having trouble, let us know and we'll
Yeah.
figure it out. If you want to speak, we want to
Okay.
let you be heard.
Okay, yes, and I just wanted to say, if you would like to chat, just so we can help moderate, just note, or if you would like to talk verbally, just put a note in the chat and I can, in case, so we're not stepping on each other's toes, unmuting. There was JB mentioned he didn't have a mic, so he just typed in his question. Will you be requesting a brownfield for removal of contamination? So the best way I can respond to that is there's a phase 1 and phase 2 environmental assessment that was performed for the site that surveyed the site for any contamination, and there is a due care plan that's going to be prepared for the site to effectively manage and prevent any other cross-contamination that may be found there. So that is part of a environmental requirement from the state of Michigan that is going to be addressed as part of this project, so that, if there are any issues present or found with the existing site, those will be dealt with in the environmentally appropriate manner and in accordance with state and local and federal regulations.
But I'd like to take the opportunity to let everyone know that we do plan to remove and get rid of that slag from that picture you saw about the foundry. So we plan to clean that up as part of the project.
Okay, so then there were a couple questions about traffic. I'm just going to respond to these, and then Kathy, in just a moment, if you would like to go ahead and comment, you can unmute yourself. But I just want to touch on that. There's a lot. One of the comments Phillips mentioned that Phillips Stoll, Jones Drive is quite narrow and cannot easily accommodate extra traffic because of the slope. The road cannot be easily widened, and sidewalks cannot easily be built. I often walk on the road. Any extra vehicular traffic will make walking more dangerous than it already is. We do have a sidewalk plan with the development along Jones Drive. That is an existing condition on Jones Drive. There isn't a sidewalk for a lot of the street that we are, trying to address as part of this by providing a sidewalk there. For projects of a certain scale, we're required to do a traffic impact study for developments. Based on the scale of this development, that's not required for this. Is there, Rob, am I getting the details of that kind of?
Yeah, we'll
right?
be required to meet city code and put a trip generation schedule on the site plan submittal. And this will all be reviewed by the city traffic engineers.
Okay. Kathy, if you want to go ahead and talk, please feel free.
Thank you very much. I'm going to come at it from a little different approach. Our neighborhood has been impacted both on the east and the west with these developments, and now right dab in the middle. And it's been rather frustrating having companies come in that primarily want to make money in our backyards. And I'm sure you can appreciate the frustration that can be felt by everybody. Jones Drive is a very narrow road. And even when driving it by myself, I have to take great pause to make sure that I'm making those turns. I hope you're taking into consideration the neighborhood. I wish you would put yourself living in the neighborhood and not look at it simply from a monetary gain. I agree with Laura completely that 5 stories is too tall. The courtyard sounds absolutely wonderful, but if you're only going to put in 7 guest parking places, then I think that courtyard land needs to be rethought. I'm disappointed the presentation and the impact that it will have on the neighborhood. And I really wish you could look at this from less, like I've already said, less than a financial gain. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Kathy. We appreciate the feedback. Tamara, would you like to go ahead and comment?
Yeah, hi, my name's Tamara Burns. I live up on Harball, which is off of Broadway. I've been on the design review board in Ann Arbor for about 12 years, I guess, since it started. Helped write all the design guidelines for the city, for the downtown. I think I don't really have a problem with the design of the project. I think it's too massive for that area. It is supposed to be in line with what the properties around it and the density around it. I'm curious that, the R4E is supposed to be along signature transit corridors, but you're not touching the signature transit corridor. I'd like to hear why aren't you bringing traffic in off of Plymouth Road? Why aren't you building a bridge over? It seems like a perfect opportunity to put all the traffic on Plymouth Road, all the access to the cars on Plymouth Road, and keep Jones pedestrian. You'd say that you wanted Jones to be a very pedestrian experience, except you're going to make it much less of a pedestrian experience and much less pleasant as a pedestrian to walk down there. A partial sidewalk is not a sidewalk. You know, it's just a little space to get off the road if a lot of cars are going by. You know, that, and I know you're not responsible for putting a sidewalk all along Jones, and I'm not sure people really want one, but it seems like you're trying to create a pedestrian environment where there already is one, but all you're going to do is make it less pedestrian. So I would really like an answer to why are you not coming in off Plymouth, and is there a reason other than cost? Thank you.
Want to take that one, Steve? I mean, we have considered the bridge off of Plymouth, and it's certainly, we just felt like our desire would be to try to get this approved without that bridge. And then if it is feasible in the future, I mean, that would be great for the community and great for this project and for Brookside Apartments. We just wanted to separate the two projects in case that is not feasible.
So it's just a cost issue. It's not, there's no reason for not putting a bridge over from Plymouth Road and bringing all the car traffic in off of Plymouth.
Yeah,
And permitting and timing.
Well,
it's worth noting too that and correct me if I'm getting the language. There's a lot of different agencies that have impact on that because it's a waterway and a drainage. It falls under the drainage jurisdiction of the county and several other agencies. And one of the reasons why the existing bridge that was previously there was removed was because it was creating obstructions to drainage in Traver Creek. So there's a whole nother set of issues that come up by proposing that new bridge over there. It's not that can't be done, but I think it's a level of complexity and a whole nother challenge to this project that when we looked at different options, it seemed for this phase just didn't seem practical and given the constraints that we had to work with.
well, the best projects are the ones that meet those challenges. I'm an architect too, I know. Every project has challenges, Rob.
Hi, Tamara.
But hello. But it's you got to do what's right for the community and what's right for this piece of land. And coming in off Jones is just wrong. It's not the answer. And I know it's, so the last bridge had problems environmentally. I mean, that's because it probably wasn't, it was built long ago. There also used to be horrible flooding in that area. I have pictures of it, but you use the information you have today and you can build a bridge. You can build something that's not going to be impacting the environmental. I would just like to see that brought forward and see what you could do with that.
Yeah, we knew this would come up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Little Debbie C, I see you've had your hand raised if you want to go ahead and speak, and if you can introduce yourself and just let us know what neighborhood you're in and give us your comments.
Sure. Yes, I'm Debbie Calvert, and I'm living in the home that I grew up in that's on Broadway. My family's been in this neighborhood for over 60 years on this parcel of property. I want to thank everybody for all my fellow neighbors for joining in and giving feedback. I must say I'm a little disappointed about how you guys invited us to come to a Zoom meeting instead of meeting us in person. I find it very impersonal. That's just my opinion. I would have liked to have seen you guys sit down at the table with us instead of being on Zoom, but that's not a reality in this day and age. I have several considerations too, I mean, I live at 1441 Broadway, and this is literally in my backyard. It's right in my backyard. So I am really strongly gonna voice my opinion about not letting this development go through. And it's not just because it's in my backyard, it's in all of our backyard. You guys will be destroying this whole neighborhood if you put a 5-story building on Jones Street. I don't know if if any of you have been to that, the driveway that's going to go down to the parking garage is like this steep. In the wintertime, cars have a hard time getting up. You know, you're gonna have to, you know, have plowing services and stuff. What concerns me too is you've got 75 units scheduled to go into that property that you're proposing to build, and you're calling it multifamily housing. And you have like a handful, like 5 units that are actually 3-bedroom apartments. All the rest are going to be 2-bedroom and 1-bedroom apartments, which you can't put a family in a 2-bedroom apartment. A family, like if you have 2 children, a boy and a girl, they won't fit in a 2-bedroom apartment, right? So you have to consider that as well. The traffic that's going to be introduced onto Jones Street, which is a very narrow, no sidewalks, very like, what did the one lady say? It was a quirky little neighborhood. It's a quirky little neighborhood, and we'd like to keep it like that. You know, I know that you know, I don't know much about the zoning. I'll just say that. I don't know much about the zoning, but I can tell you right now that you guys are in it for the money. You don't really, I can just feel that you guys really don't care what the neighbors and want to how to keep our neighborhood. We keep getting encroached on all sides. You know, look at the bottom of the hill. I don't even drive down that way anymore because I can't get through all the traffic because it's just congested, as really congested. And adding, what'd you say, 50 more parking spaces for the cars that are going to be there? Laura made a very good point. It's like people that live in this neighborhood, you know, that are going to be living in your apartment building, they're going to be roommates that have 2 cars. They're going to be like couples that have work different schedules and they're going to have 2 cars. Not everybody's going to be jumping on the bus line to go to Kroger. You know, so I don't know. I'm just really against it. And I know that my whole neighborhood is too. I don't know. That's just my thoughts. I got a lot more, but that's what I've got for right now. Thank you for letting me share.
Thanks, Debbie. And I took a couple notes as you're talking, and we were weighing what was the better approach to do this via Zoom or in person, and there are pros and cons. So I sympathize with your comment there. We are aware of the existing driveway there that goes down to Arbor Springs. It's a known limitation and challenge of the site that we've had to work with. And there's actually a major city water main that goes under that driveway. So changing that is more complex than it might otherwise seem.
I know that the owner and developer is well aware of that and are actually currently managing that steep slope right now, so their current residents can get to their unit. So yeah, we're well aware. It's a very challenging site.
Tom, I know you've had your hand raised for a while, but I'm gonna try and let other people speak first before I come back to you and let you speak again. Okay.
Yeah.
Jack, I saw you had your hand raised there for a while, so if you want to go ahead and comment.
Good evening. Excuse me. This is Jack Edelstein. I've lived on Jones Drive from 1987 to 1999. And my family and I currently live on Lair Drive, which is just up the hill from Jones. And we also own some rental properties on Jones Drive. So my first comment is that I welcome new residential development in the neighborhood. And in general, I find your plan aesthetically appealing. I understand some of the concerns expressed by my neighbors about the density. And I guess I would urge you to consider possibly reducing the building from 5 to 4 stories or 3. But my main concern, to echo Tamara Burns, is the traffic on Jones. I would be much more supportive and comfortable of this development if you were able to actually engineer the egress via Plymouth Road. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jack. Okay. Gregory had, Ann Arbor has 2 different paths being considered for getting electricity instead of, or in addition to DTE, one of which is termed an SEU. That is a local energy production process. I don't see enough area to generate a lot of electricity from solar and distribute to residents. Please look into this if you've not already done so. I can't say I'm familiar with the specifics of that, but that's something we can certainly take a look into there. Okay, is there anybody else who is waiting to speak? Either note in the chat or raise your hand and let me know. Okay, since nobody else is waiting, Tom, if you want to comment again, please go ahead.
Thank you. I think it's important to acknowledge what a rezoning to R4 means, and that it means the site will then have the power of R4E. Even if this particular site plan isn't built, a future owner, perhaps this building doesn't get built for various reasons, another economic downturn, whatever, a future owner, a future developer could propose anything that meets the R4E and have it by right at that point, because that zoning would be attached to the property. We have specific experience with a development called The One north of Skydale, Huron Highlands. It was approved in one way before the downturn, before the Great Recession. That zoning allowed a by right development to come for a new developer after the Great Recession. And it is a student development that shuttles students to campus. Most of the people who back up to that on Skydale moved since that happened. It made living intolerable for those residents. Now, new people moved in knowing what the conditions were. They were able to sell their houses on Skydale. But the important thing for you to acknowledge to us that if you zone this R4E, this building doesn't have to be built, and a vastly different building might get built. All rezonings have to acknowledge that. So please acknowledge that. If we did rezone this to a new PUD for this same building, that wouldn't apply. So there would be some protection there. However, I do feel that this building is completely inappropriate for the area. It is a Jones Drive development. Jones Drive is not along a signature transit corridor. So I would request that you come back with a different building that is appropriate for our zoning code and for the neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tom. And just a note on that, I understand what you're saying about the ability for a by right zoning there, because of the height limitation that would be allowed under R4E. And that's something why we were talking about considering a conditional zoning as part of the project. That would be one way we could address that. There's no motive to bait and switch by anybody here. Like, we're putting a lot of work into trying to get this project right the way it's currently designed. But I do understand, and you're right about the legal implications of that rezoning if there's no other restrictions there.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments from the audience there? Either put in the chat or raise your hand.
Can you mute the people that are on the mic?
Everyone's a laptop. Yeah.
Okay. Well, if there's any other thoughts, we'll wait on for a few more minutes. I appreciate and I think the whole team, I speak for all of us when we really appreciate all the feedback and questions we got tonight. As I mentioned, we're going to take all the notes. I'll take all the written notes in chat. We'll take the summary of the comments that we discussed verbally on the call here, and we're going to include that as part of the documentation that will be ultimately included with this project when it gets submitted for review to the planning department. If you have any other comments, we can stay on here for a few more minutes if there's some other thoughts or questions or feedback that you have. I know our meeting was scheduled until 7:30. Oh, and I see Philip Stoll asked to speak. So Phil, you can go ahead, or pardon me, Philip, you can go ahead and unmute and speak if you'd like.
Oh,
Philip, I don't know if you unmuted, but we can't hear you if you would like to talk.
Can we unmute him?
Philip is unmuted.
Oh,
Go ahead, Phil.
no, that's Brian Z.
Oh,
Okay.
I saw it in the chat there, Philip. If you want to speak, and we don't hear you, so it might be a mic issue, but if you get it figured out, please just go ahead.
Mic to work.
Oh, okay. Okay, Philip, if you're able to get your mic working again, let us know. But in the meantime, Brian, if you want to go ahead and speak in Brian Z, just introduce yourself, please, and let us know what neighborhood you're in, and go ahead and speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm right on Jones. Actually, it's a family property we've had since the late '80s. So we're
And,
very.
and sorry, Brian, can you give me your last name just for the record?
I'm sorry, Zimmer, Brian Zimmer.
Thank you.
And we have a piece of property just up the road. Right, currently, it's a rental. It's right across from Brookside, so I'm very familiar with the area. I kind of was impressed with your initial presentation. I do like your building, but I do have to agree with everybody that, and even my thoughts coming into this, that's a big structure. 75 units is a lot. I mean, if there's, I don't know how many houses there are on Jones. One comment is even two cars going in opposite directions along Jones is tight. So bringing more cars into that street, it's going to be a problem. I mean, there's not a whole lot of like street parking already, and getting cars up and down that road. Like I said, it's mostly I wouldn't say it's a 1-lane road, but it's pretty tight. But I don't know. I just want to say that that I'm not thrilled. I think there could be a better design. Appreciate everybody's everyone else's comments, and appreciate your time. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, I did get Philip's, or I'm sorry, no, this was from Paul Green. 5 stories is so much. Go to 3 entrance on Plymouth Road. Provide more setback from Jones. Although there are some architectural details break up the building mass, the buildings still appear monolithic. Paul Green on Harple. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Paul. Philip, we were able to hear you there. It sounds like your mic's working if you'd like to speak.
Hi, it'd be faster if I speak.
Yes.
The brewery is a very historic building. The Ann Arbor Observer, I think it said it was the first business run by a black and a white person together. It's nice that you are using brick, but I would hope you would go some architectural revisions so it is more in keeping with the historic character of the neighborhood. Another point, Nielsen's and Beekman on Broadway have completely ineffective courtyards. They are empty virtually all the time. You can think twice before you put a little tiny courtyard, because there's examples of unsuccessful courtyards at the bottom of Broadway. The building across from Angelo's went through a number of revisions, and I think everyone is pretty happy with it. And my hope is that you would work with the community, work with council, and keep revising the design, because it's good that you're starting with brick, but we would like it better if it fit into the neighborhood. And the Juliet balconies, it just doesn't really fit the neighborhood. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Philip. Okay. Still have about 10 minutes left. If there's any additional comments, questions from anybody here. Really appreciate getting some really good feedback here, and glad so many people turned out today.
you see that last one?
Yes, it looks like Tom had another comment. It would be nice to see drawings showing the building height compared to the Brookside apartments and to the houses on Broadway. Yes, I can understand the desire for that. It is a little tricky for us because we don't have the heights of all the buildings on Broadway right now. I mean, because there are so many properties and they're private residences, it's a little difficult to get all that information. You know, we have taken a look at the existing topography that's bounding the site. We do have it varies from the west to the east, and it ranges from about an 11 feet change in elevation from Jones to Broadway up to, I think it's about 25, if I'm not mistaken, 27 feet. And that's just from ground level. So, you know, if we take the height difference on top of that, you know, of the houses on Broadway, which I believe are mostly 2-story with gables up above, you know, that's a way we can kind of look at that. So, but if you think about it, the ground level of the houses on Broadway are anywhere from 1 to over 2 stories above where the floor level of the proposed development would be. Any other questions while we're on here? We'll stick around for a few more minutes in case anybody has any thoughts they'd like to bring up.
People starting to drop off.
Okay.
Stephen, would it help to show that section again? There's been a
Sure.
couple of
Yeah,
chats
we did
about-
have that, and maybe we kind of went through it, just talking about the height differentiation between Jones. Give me just a minute and I'll get my screen share back up. That might be helpful too.
Oh, and then someone's asking about the next opportunity for engagement.
Sure. So the next opportunity for engagement would be at, excuse me. So like I said, what's going to happen is we're going to take all the notes from this and compile it as part of the site plan submittal. Once that happens, it's going to go to the city planning staff for review, and it's going to have to go through all of those city agencies that have jurisdiction in various ways over the project. There is then, after it goes through planning staff, going to be a public hearing at the City Planning Commission. So that would be the first, that might be the first opportunity for engagement there, at least formally from the city level. And that would probably be later in the fall. You know, once it's a several month-long review process just to go through the city departments that check for, you know, compliance with all the different regulations that affect the project. All right, you're welcome, Ariana. Okay, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and try and share that section now. Apologize, I'm lost my presentation mode here, but that's it, didn't I? There we go. Okay, so this is a pretty rough section showing the elevation. This would be like one of the garages on Broadway. It's, you know, again, it varies a little bit depending on where you are on the site, but it's ranging from 1 to 2 stories above where it is on Jones.
Yeah, we will say that the foliage is very dense along that embankment that runs along Jones Drive, so it will act as a filter.
5 or 6 minutes. If anybody's interested in questions or comments, we'll stay on till 7:30. And then we'll close down.
Paul Green, you may find it helpful to meet in person with the Broadway and off-Broadway neighborhood groups.
Okay. Paul, I think it was Paul Green. I'm not familiar with the Broadway and off-Broadway neighborhood groups. So if you could provide us more information, that gives us a little more to go on there. But I don't know if that's a local group or if a Facebook group or something else. But if you have any other info, let us know.
I just want to say that it's hard to think of a street that's more rural that's in the city of Ann Arbor. And it just is sort of mind-blowing that, you know, people are trying to do a development of this scale in this neighborhood where we don't have sidewalks, we don't have curbs, you know, the streets like maybe one lane and a little bit more. It's just pretty stunning.
And I'm sorry, your name once again, Jeffra.
Laura Stroll.
Oh, okay, that's right. Okay, sorry, I forgot what the
No,
name
that was
being
me.
shifted.
That was me. That was Jeffra, Jeffra.
Oh, okay. And what's your last name, Jeffra, for the record?
Rockwell.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Okay, just a couple more minutes left. We'll close down here at 7:30. If there's any last comments, feel free to raise your hand or drop it in the chat. Here we go. We got a link.
Great. Thank you, Gregory.
Good meeting.
Really good to see so many people come out here today. Paul, I did see your comment about the groups. They're officially recognized by the city. I guess if you have any contact information to share, that would be helpful. And you could send that to me directly. I wouldn't know who to reach out to there. So if you have anything, that'd be helpful.
Okay, shut it down. Let's go. I'm done.
1 minute.
I told you we give till 7:30.
I didn't know.
Nobody has to stay.
I didn't know I was live. Sorry about
that.
You're the only one, I think.
You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. No, we'll close it at 7:30. I don't see anything else in the chat. Okay. All right, everybody. Well, thank you again for your time and joining us. We really appreciate all the thoughtful comments, questions, and feedback. And we will record all these and include them with our meeting notes. So thank you again. Have a great evening.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Go ahead and stop the recording when you're ready. Yeah. So
Recording stopped.